Well, my dad threw around the old pigskin, and I'm just a garn-tootin' good old American who would never tell a fib on God's green earth. Hallelujah. For those of you who don't know, Kari Lake was running for, I believe she was running for governor. Yeah, she was running for governor in the state of Arizona, and she really wanted to be governor. She was running hard. She campaigned. Oh, sorry, Arizona, governor of Arizona. Yeah. Wait, I thought I said Arizona. Well, she was running for governor of Arizona, and she ran the whole time of being a big Trump sycophant, kind of a MAGA candidate, has gone more and more down that rabbit hole as she has evolved from her time on television as a news host to her time as a political candidate and political activist. Then she ran against Katie Hobbs, and she lost. She lost by about 3 to 4 points. It wasn't within the margin of error. It wasn't particularly close. Like, it was close in the way, like 4% difference. But when we talk about 4% difference, that's tens of thousands of votes, right? I mean, let's actually look at the election results, the official election results. Katie Hobbs versus Kari Lake. Final results. I think it should still be available online. Do we have the final results? This is not the end. This is not the end results. I don't think this is it. No, this is not. Does anybody have the actual end results? Those things probably ended like once it was called. Do I have to look at Wikipedia? Ugh. Ballotpedia. Here we go. There it is. Well, actually, no, it really was. Okay. I thought it was actually a bigger margin than that, but it was a 17,000 vote difference. Huh. Either way, it wasn't within the margin of error, and it wasn't close enough to call a recount or to do anything to, like, you know, end it or like to overturn it. There was no avenue for Kari Lake to overturn the election, and so the rest of the world moved on. Democrat won the governorship of Arizona. World moves on. A lot of people, including myself, was very nervous about Kari Lake becoming governor because of how much she denies election results. And it's going to be risky for somebody to be governor of a state when they can't accept the results of a democratic election. And that's why I wanted Katie Hobbs to win and Kari Lake to lose. Kari Lake lost. I was happy. Most Democrats were happy. And we all moved on. Besides Kari Lake did not move on. Kari Lake did not continue her political campaign any further with okay, it's done, I'm moving on to do this other thing, or I'm gonna do this now. She's just continued running. She didn't accept the results of the election. She said it was rigged. She made multiple filings with the courts. None of them have gone anywhere. I think 8 of them, I think she made like 10 complaints. 8 of them were thrown out. 2 of them were looked at by a judge, and the judge basically said, we can't do anything with this. And ever since then, Kari Lake has just said, don't worry, right around the corner, we got this big bombshell that's going to drop. All this evidence that's going to come out. Don't worry. Oh, the opponents didn't even look at the evidence. But when she says that, that's because, like, most of them were just thrown out. There was no reason for her opponents to look at the evidence because it was thrown out by a judge. The judge just disregarded it, said this is ridiculous. And so she's done this, basically the Trump playing card of just keep denying the results of the election, never accept the loss. Which, I gotta say, not only is it sad and it's pathetic, and people, every time they see Kari Lake, should laugh her out of the room, there's also an element that is just poisonous for democracy. I mean, really acidic for democratic institutions. Because democracy only works if the losers accept that they've lost. There's no democracy if one of the 2 major parties cannot accept defeat. If they can't accept defeat, then there's not a democracy. Then you only want democracy when you win, which isn't democracy. And so she continues this campaign. She continues going out in public. And recently she went on Piers Morgan's show to continue this diatribe about the election was stolen from her. But to her surprise, it felt like she actually got a lot of pushback from Piers Morgan. to the point where she was low-key getting dragged by him. So I've only seen a small snippet of the interview, so I wanted to watch the whole thing with you guys, because I've heard that she got pretty flustered. Let's watch it.
Well, joining me now is Kari Lake. She was a Republican nominee for Arizona governor, one of the leading lights in the Make America Great Again movement, and being touted by some pundits as President Trump's running mate in 2024. Well, Kari Lake, welcome to Piers Morgan Uncensored.
It's so wonderful to be with you today.
I gotta say, I think one of the things, and he did just bring this up, Kari Lake's strategy could be just tying herself so close to Trump, which she has, she praises Trump constantly, that she gets to be his running mate, since the odds of it being Mike Pence this time around are low. Maybe it will be Kari Lake, maybe Trump will come to a deal with Nikki Haley, and Nikki Haley will be his running mate, since she's now announced she's running for president. Who knows what it'll be, but that is a possible path forward for Kari Lake, since she's not governor, and she's got nothing to do but whine.
Today, Piers.
So look, we've never spoken, but I've watched you with fascination from afar, not least because for a long time, you were doing what I'm doing. You were anchoring the news, and you did that for many years. So my first question is, what on earth possessed you to want to give up a lovely job like this to get into the what can often be a hellhole of political life?
You mean, why would I leave the news to jump into the swamp? That is a good question, and I did love my career. For 30 years, I was a broadcast journalist, and I love digging into issues, learning about them, telling people stories. But during COVID, I really had an epiphany, a wake-up call, that what was being pushed by the news, the mainstream corporate news, was half-truths and fear tactics, and really was just dividing our country. And I could no longer lend my heart and my soul and my voice and my reputation to putting out half-truths. I wasn't interested in that. So I did a lot of soul searching.
Decided you wanted to lie on the national stage.
Searching and praying, and I walked away from my career, my very successful career, 22 years as #1 news anchor in Arizona.
God told me I won the election.
I walked away from a massive paycheck, and I just said, God, I'm putting my life in your hands. Take me where you want me. And the amazing people of Arizona reached out. They were so moved by what I did that they reached out to me and said, would you please run for office? We need somebody who understands us, understands our state, our issues, and will absolutely represent us. And so I reluctantly went into politics. I didn't even know how to run for office. I had to call the Arizona Republican Party and say, how do you run for office? I mean, I'm really at the heart of it just a mom who is concerned about where our state is going. And so that's how I ended up running for office. Little did I know that we would lead an amazing movement here in the state, bringing in independents, Democrats, and Republicans to bring about change here in Arizona.
Change.
And secure.
What change did she get? Can I just, like, the only change she has brought about in Arizona is giving somebody else a high-profile job in news media in Arizona news. And she's hired a lot of lawyers, so I guess she's a job creator. I don't know. Like, what else has she done?
Secure our streets and secure our border. Unfortunately, the election didn't go the way that we wanted to, because we have a lot of fraud in our elections, and we're working through that right now.
Okay.
Can I just say, you know what this reminds me of? This, like, election denial stuff? Do you ever see people on Twitter who are complaining, like, why is it that I'm not getting a ton of followers? Why I feel like I should be getting more followers. You know, I feel like I should have more followers on my Twitter account. Is Twitter suppressing me? To me, that's embarrassing to see somebody do that. Even if I thought that there was something going on, I would never say that out loud unless I had, like, unreputable evidence, because it just sounds like you're coping to such a degree that you've deluded yourself, or that you're just, like, spreading information about, why am I so unpopular? Why does nobody like me? That's what it sounds like, right? And so I've had a week where I haven't gained over more than 100 followers, and I was like, oh, not a lot. If I went out and I said I only got 100 followers this week because I would not be willing to show my face in public again. I'd be so embarrassed. But she's made a career out of that, and I find that very I found that kind of, like, self-flogging in public very interesting to watch from a distance, man. I could never do what she's doing. That's for damn sure.
Well, that was a good pitch, but let me just put a butt into the works there, because I'm curious about A lot
Of course.
a lot of things have happened to you in your life where you've made quite dramatic changes. And I want to just talk to you about them. For example, you used to be a Buddhist, according to some of your friends, but now you're Christian. Before Trump's inauguration in 2017...
She used to be a Buddhist? Did she actually? That's why I never heard that, really.
You posted an anti-Trump post. Now you're one of the big Trumpers. You were very supportive of John McCain after he died and called him courageous and a hero, and then you turned on him. You were a Republican, you became an independent, you then became a Democrat, you're now a Republican again. So your critics would say, come on, Kari Lake, who is the real Kari Lake here? You're flip-flopping all over the place.
I don't know a lot of what he's talking about right now. What he's talking about is actually a lot of it's news to me. But it is true that she was an anti-Trump Republican, and this recent turn to the MAGA movement is a development that's really happened very recently. And a lot of people say that the type of kind of conspiracy theories and election denial that she's engaged in, this is new for her. And so that's made some people question whether it's genuine or not. It's hard for me to know if it's genuine or not. I can't read into the minds of a person. It's very convenient that the election denial just so happens to align perfectly with the candidates that she wants to win. And I've never seen Kari Lake stand up and say, hey, that Democrat had an election stolen from him. I've never heard that, because if it is true that there's all this fraud going on and all these elections are being stolen, it's crazy that the elections are only being stolen from the candidates that you like. And I've never heard any of them stand up and say, wait a second. Wait, maybe Stacey Abrams actually won. Wait, let's look at the ballot. Like, we've never heard that. It's just so convenient. And so it does make me feel like this could just be cynical politics. I can't read her mind. Maybe she has just gone down this rabbit hole genuinely in the last few years. It's possible, but it's impossible to say really, but it does have some signs of just cynical politics to it. Could be a combination of both, really. She could believe it to a large percentage, and it's easy to believe because it helps her, because in her view, then I'm never a loser. I'm always winning. I'm always a winner. I can never lose an election, you know?
On all this stuff.
Let's sort, first of all,
how do you
let's
plead?
sort through that. You're throwing a lot at me, so let me hit all of that. I am a woman of Christ and a woman of faith. I grew up Lutheran and Catholic growing up. I'm now an evangelical. And I think that there's something you can garner from every religion in the world. And the Buddhists are peaceful, and I think it's absolutely wonderful. I've been very much into yoga in my life, and so I don't have a problem with any religion of the world. And wherever you can find something that stirs your soul and gives you peace in this difficult time, I think that's wonderful. I find that in the Bible, and I am a Christian and a evangelical Christian, and I don't judge anybody by their religion. I've never made an
Okay, you don't judge anybody by their religion. By the way, the candidate she wants to win in 2024, Donald Trump, advocated for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the country. No problem with any religion, but my candidate wants to ban Muslims and has advocated to ban Muslims, which is unconstitutional, by the way, until he reeled it back later once, that nasty old Constitution got in the way.
A negative post about President Trump at all. I don't know what you're talking about, and it would challenge you to
Well, it was a Facebook
prove
post.
that that's real.
Okay, let me clarify. It was a Facebook post. We're showing it on screen. It was one that you posted to your Facebook, which was right on the eve of the inauguration. And after Fox News revealed this, apparently it then got taken down. But it was not my president, and it was posted.
Okay, let's read this. Not my president. Inauguration day, Friday, January 20th, National Day of Mourning and Protests. Find and join local protests. Wear black. Boycott TV coverage. Unfollow Trump on social media. Oh, God, come on. Really? Okay, this is silly. Use Not My President. Donate to Planned Parenthood, ACLU, NAACP. Now let's read what she wrote in the top right corner here. Facebook follower just sent me this. A list of suggestions for how you can protest the president-elect on inauguration day. He says there will be massive protests coinciding with the inauguration of Donald Trump. Will you be protesting the inauguration? If so, which of these suggestions will you adopt? Will you boycott TV coverage? Wear black? Donate money? To the ACLU, NAACP, or Planned Parenthood? Use the hashtag? Will you unfollow Trump? Well, I'm going to be honest. I don't know how much I can interpret this as an anti-Trump post. I mean, I guess you could try to, but it honestly sounds like she's asking a question about like how many of her followers will be doing this. I would have to, it says see more, you can like read more of the post, but it sounds like she's saying that a follower sent her this and she's asking her followers how many of them will be doing this. I don't think there's like, I mean, it could be vaguely anti-Trump, right? Because the post itself is anti-Trump, but the word she added with it was was her asking about anti-Trump people, asking them questions. So I don't think this is enough, honestly.
Never taken anything down from my. I've never taken anything down from my Facebook post, and I've never printed anything derogatory toward President Trump. As a journalist, it was not my job to post anything derogatory about the president. I would often talk about something happening in the news and say, hey, what do you think? This is happening and this is happening. What are your thoughts? That's how I use social media as a journalist. And I think that's a really healthy way to use social media, where you get people kind of socializing and discussing issues on social media. I've always been a supporter of President Trump, but I didn't feel the need to put that out publicly. As a journalist, you really should keep your ideas in check. I also covered the McCains, and I covered everybody fairly. It's not my job as a journalist to tell somebody how to think about them.
No, I think the thing with John McCain. Look, let me explain on John McCain, because I knew John McCain.
Read the post. Read the post for me.
Well,
I challenge you to read the post, and I knew him well as well.
Here's what I would say about John McCain. Is that I knew him, I interviewed him many times, I had huge admiration for him. And it seemed after he died, you shared all that admiration. You called him courageous and heroic and so on. But then...
Read the post,
But then in your campaign to be governor,
you
were pretty scathing about him. And you said that Arizona produced a lot of losers.
No,
and people took that to mean John McCain, right?
Well, I can't help if people think that. I mean, that's kind of a silly thing to think.
Well, then who is the loser? Wait, okay, I'm sorry. I've seen the Republican parties like turn on John McCain. I've seen it in the last 8 years. More and more people have turned against him and now hate John McCain. Definitely, a lot of them, the final straw was him basically saving Obamacare during the Trump administration, right? Because he said, look, there's nothing to replace Obamacare here. I'm not going to get rid of Obamacare if there's nothing to replace it to help all these people who are going to be thrown off of it. And he killed it. And then he later died soon after. And for a lot of Republicans, him stopping that was like the final straw. And then they never forgave him for it, right? And so now John McCain, in the minds of a lot of people politically, he's like almost like a pariah, where most Democrats don't like him because he's a Republican. A lot of Republicans don't like him because he's not a Trump Republican. And it's only like mostly centrists and like middle of the road moderate types that have any like favorable memories of John McCain. Right? And even many of them would say they would never vote for him. So, like, John McCain has a really strange legacy in American politics. But when she says Arizona's produced a lot of losers, who is she referring to? Because when I read it in the original tweet, because I have read this, it did feel like that she was talking about John McCain. Who was she referring to?
I covered John McCain. I have immense respect for his military career. You know, he was a politician here for 40 years. I covered him for many of those years. And no politician is free from criticism of their work. I mean, I look at President Trump. He was criticized day in and day out for, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and he's still being criticized, even though he's a private citizen. We can definitely criticize our politicians and the work they do. I know that Senator McCain promised, and I covered him probably longer than you did, Piers, to end Obamacare, replace it with something better when he had the opportunity, and that fell squarely on his shoulders. He went in and gave the thumbs down and didn't do what he promised the people of Arizona.
That's not true. She's just lying. She's rewriting history. John McCain wanted to replace Obamacare, right? And whatever John McCain would have replaced Obamacare with, if it was up to him, would have been worse than Obamacare, right? I believe in socialized medicine, right? So I disagree fundamentally with John McCain's belief about healthcare. The reason he voted it down was not because there was an opportunity to vote down Obamacare and replace it with something better. There was nothing to replace it with. This was the main complaint a lot of people had with Donald Trump, even from within conservative circles, is that Donald Trump said, don't worry, guys, I'm going to make it. He always said on the campaign trail, I'm going to have an amazing healthcare plan. I'm going to have an amazing healthcare plan, and I'll announce it after I'm made president. Everybody was like, that's stupid. Announce it now. He's like, no, don't worry. I'll announce it later. Then he becomes president. Then he starts to repeal Obamacare. And he's like, don't worry, I'll show you guys my amazing healthcare plan after we've repealed Obamacare. We'll release our amazing healthcare plan after, and we'll implement it. So you're going to kick millions of Americans off their healthcare plan, and we're just supposed to believe that in that time period between them getting kicked off and when you reveal this plan, we need to, number one, assume that it's better than Obamacare, and number two, assume that you'll be able to actually implement it and that you'll actually get the votes for it. No, John McCain, even as much as I don't like the idea of repealing Obamacare and replacing it with something worse, which is what I think John McCain would have done, he didn't go back on his promise. Because his promise was repeal and replace. You just asked him to repeal with no plan outside of Donald Trump's word to replace it. And we all know how little Donald Trump's word is worth.
When he was running for Senate, one of the times that he was running for re-election, he did an ad saying, build the dang fence, build the dang wall. And then when President Trump said, you know what, let's do that. The people do want that. He fought tooth and nail against that. He was censured by the Republican Party here. I know that on a world stage, many people know him, but a lot of Republicans in Arizona felt like he showed up for a few months every 6 years to run for re-election and then ignored a lot of the issues facing Arizona.
Right.
I don't believe any politician
you're,
should be free from criticism.
Okay, I completely agree. No one should be free from criticism. I think it was the juxtaposition.
I know I haven't been. I haven't
of course
been.
Not. I know I'm going to come to that, but I think the only point I would make is you were so praiseworthy of him in his death, and yet very soon after that, suddenly it looked like you turned on him.
Well, Piers, really, honestly, someone has just passed away, and he's an icon. He led an amazing life. I said the Maverick has passed away, and that was his nickname, as you know, because
Well, I don't know why anybody would call him the Maverick, by the way. I can understand, like there's a lot of political nicknames. Maverick for John McCain, it doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand that nickname.
I've interviewed him. I have a heart and a soul, and I know the suffering of losing a father. I lost my father more than a decade ago, and I still tear up at the thought of that, and I feel for the family. I'm a human being, and so are they, and I feel for that. I've not been unfairly critical of John McCain. I think any criticism I've launched at him was that he didn't do what he told the people he would do. And I am not out to get anybody. I actually brought a lot of the Republican Party together. I'm an America First Republican. We have McCain Republicans here, and I believe that we can work together. We agree on 95% of everything, maybe 99% of everything. We Republicans do. And we tend to kind of duke things out and debate, and I wish that the other party did that. They don't. They just fall in line.
Well, Kari, let me turn to one thing which is splitting the party, and that is this issue of stolen elections. So obviously, Donald Trump supported you, and you've been very supportive of his belief that he had the 2020 election stolen from him. I've interviewed Donald Trump, and we had a great interview, but I took him on and said, I don't think that election was stolen from you. And more than that,
let's get into it.
I think your persistence in claiming it is damaging to your chances of potentially winning again. And I would say to you, Kari Lake, you're clearly a rising star in the Republican firmament. You've got a lot of popularity. In fact, since you lost the election, and we'll come to whether you think you have or not in a moment, but since you did, a lot of money's come in for you. So people think Kari Lake, rising star, potentially on a Trump ticket, who knows where that will go? And I'll ask you about that. But you, again, have not accepted the results of the election.
Thank you.
And there is a belief that it's almost deliberate. It's like you've looked at Donald Trump and thought, you know what, there's a great way to make money and fame for myself, and that's to be an election denier. And I would simply say to you what I said to Donald Trump. I don't think it works for you guys. I don't think denying the result of democratic elections...
It hasn't really worked. I mean, the thing is, the idea is you would deny the results of elections, then maybe you could do institutional capture, so then next time you can be like, now that I've won and I've changed the institutions to work in my favor during an election, now I can say the elections are fair because I won. Notice how you didn't hear from Donald Trump after he won in 2016? Actually, I think this election was rigged. He said... If he loses, before all the elections he ran, and he was like, if I lose, it's rigged. So anytime he loses, no matter what, he's going to say it was rigged and it was rigged against him. It happened during Republican primaries. It happened during 2020 after he lost. He was always in a position to say it was rigged against me. The establishment was just too scared of me, yada, yada. But the institutional capture didn't work. They didn't capture the institutions in order to use them in any way. That hasn't happened, right? Whether it was because Kari Lake didn't win in Arizona or the Secretary of State Republican didn't win for Arizona, who was also a big election denier. Why it didn't work in 2022 with the American people, I mean, I guess for most Americans, it was just like, why should I go out and vote if the system is rigged? Why should I go out and vote for Republicans if the system's rigged from the get-go? That's the problem with telling your people that the system's rigged, is if you keep telling them the system's rigged, they might actually believe it. And if they believe it, they might not go out and vote. And there was a lot of people who called into shows after the 2022 midterms and said, but it was rigged. Why do I need to go out and vote if it's rigged? And that's pretty decent logic. There's a lot of people I will talk to and I'll ask them why they don't vote. And they say, oh, it's rigged. And people have always said that, but there's a lot more people saying that now because of Donald Trump's nonsense. And that's disproportionately on the Republican side. It's hurting them. Not to mention all of the discouraging of people to vote by mail. That hurts Republicans because if you have one less avenue to vote, that means you just have less means to pick up votes. And also, it's not super encouraging because to me, it feels like if you're going to say the election is rigged and I'm going to vote because it was rigged and I'm so angry about Trump losing, you have to almost entirely rely on the cult of personality to motivate that person. The cult of personality behind Trump, the cult of personality behind Kari, to say, I'm behind them. No, I don't care what the results say. I don't care what the independent monitors say. I don't care what the news says and all the people who covered this election more than any other election in human history, with people having camera phones in their pockets where they could record anything, and there's no hard evidence been produced. I don't care about any of that. I believe Trump and I believe Kari at their word. I believe all these people at their word. There were just not enough people to win in 2022. There was not enough people who were solely motivated by the Trump cult to go out and vote for Republicans. And that's why Republicans underperformed severely in the midterms, when usually the opposition party does very well in the first midterm after the other party wins the presidency. That's the tradition. That's how it usually goes. It was the worst underperformance in these conditions in over 40 years. And a part of me, I know it's bad for our democracy to see Kari Lake and Donald Trump, for their own interests, try to corrode people's trust in our institutions. Because I do truly believe that as Americans, as people just generally, you need to trust in institutions, not individuals, for long-term society building. Because individuals can die, institutions are supposed to exist through the eons, through the ages, right? And you want them to be strong, and you want them to be fair. Right? Building strong and fair and stable institutions is very important for a democracy. It's very important for any country. But on the other hand, if this is such a pitiful election campaign strategy, then maybe just keep letting them run on it. Keep letting them lose. Do you think Donald Trump, if he comes back in 2024 and says, I'm running to get rid of election fraud because it was stolen from me, that the whole country isn't just going to roll their eyes collectively and say, get out of here? This is a joke. I do think that's probably what would happen if he ends up running on that. And you want to know what some people said? I remember I talked to Lecture Fan about this. He said, well, don't worry, Dylan. Don't worry. He's not talking about it as much as he used to. He is. He's right back on the campaign trail. Right after he announced the election, 2 days after he announced, he was right back to election denial. So in one hand, I'm like, for the betterment of our country, this type of pitiful election denial should stop. But on the other hand, it's probably good for the Democrats when it comes to these next few elections, when you think about it, because it's not the best campaign strategy. And the longer Republicans screw up their campaign strategy, the better it's going to be for Democrats. So I'm really divided on how I hope this goes in 2024. Shiro Shirio, thank you so much for the tier 1 and being sub for 5 months. Really enjoyed seeing your channel evolve from debate panels to more serious content. Thanks, Dylan. Thank you. And with that, I think there's only a 1 sub difference between Sight and Gutter. Oh my goodness. Gutter Chat Rising? Who knows?
It's an effective tool to actually win elections.
That is the silliest thing I've ever heard. That is absolutely, it's funny, actually. I campaigned 525 days across the most beautiful state. Is
it really that funny and silly to think that, hey, you see those people? Like Donald Trump, who said if he ever loses an election, it's rigged, and is like a lifelong con man. After he lost an election, he said it was rigged. He said he was going to do this from the start. That we might think maybe this is cynical politics and this isn't genuine belief that he won, or genuine outrage at election fraud. That this is cynical and it's just, if Donald Trump ever loses, it was rigged because he's a cynical politician and he just wants to win no matter what, because that's all he cares about. He doesn't care about institutions. He cares about himself. Is that really that funny? Because to me, I feel like that's hitting the nail like straight on the head, right? I mean, Donald Trump might have thought he actually won, but if he does, to me, that's actually worse, because that means not only is he denying the democratic results of an election, that also means he's incredibly fucking deluded, because that means that he could never imagine any scenario ever where he could lose an election for real. And he said multiple times on the campaign trail, if I lose, it is rigged. You do not say that if you think there's any scenario where you can lose and it's not rigged. So he's either completely deluded in his own grandeur, which is possible, or a cynical lying piece of shit. Either way, it's bad for a country, and it shows him to be of terrible character. And Kari Lake has hit on all the same points. It's not that funny. It sounds pretty on point.
In the country, Arizona, and I know the people, and I worked incredibly hard, and our volunteers and the people gathered around. It really was a movement, and you weren't here to cover it, unlike we've ever seen in politics. 72%
Yeah, but you lost, Gary.
Of Arizona voters, sir, 72% of Arizona voters believe that that election, something was wrong and it wasn't honest. 72% of Arizonans. And I want to make sure, I have children, I have two.
Can I just say, why should I care? Like, I care on the level of it's bad when people don't trust institutions. But a polling, number one, I would like to hear the source, right? What the source is for that data. But why should polling data necessarily indicate that there was fraud? If I was to poll people on, do you think the Russians have control or influence over Donald Trump? Do you think there would not be a lot of Americans who'd be like, yeah, I heard about this P tape, you know, and I heard about the Internet Research Agency, which is real, by the way. Yeah, I think the Russians control Trump. And I would say, hey, 55% or any percent of Americans believe that Trump's controlled by, must be controlled by the Russians. Like, I don't understand, like, you're in a bad spot if I'm asking you, like, hey, you're denying the results of this election. This seems pretty cynical. Well, look at the polling data. Well, what about the evidence around the fraud? Do you have any evidence for the fraud? I think she's talking about this poll.
That I made it the fuck up.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Children 18 and 19 years old. I want to make sure when they grow up, we don't continue to run elections like a banana republic, where on election day, voters showed up, our voters showed up 75% to 25%, 3-1 on election day, and the machines weren't working. They printed intentionally the wrong image on the ballot, and that was meant to have the ballot spit out and rejected by the tabulators.
They intentionally broke the machines? You're going to have some pretty good evidence for that.
250,000 times on election day. More than half of the ballots were spit out.
But Kari,
by
as
the tabulators.
you know, there's actually been no
Piers, we can't continue to run elections that way.
Kari, there's been no independent corroboration that there was anything fraudulent about this election. In fact, it's pretty clear that you lost to Katie Hobbs, your rival, 50.3% to 49.6%. And as with Donald Trump...
Wait, 53.6% to 49. Was I right? I thought it was more. See, I said earlier that it was tens of thousands of votes difference. Was I right? And was the data I'm looking at outdated? Did I remember the percentages better than Google? I hope so. That'd be cool. If anybody's got a link on that, I appreciate it.
Trump, when I said to him, where's the hard evidence? He went down all sorts of rabbit holes, but he couldn't produce hard evidence.
There's a ton of... Piers, there's a mountain of hard evidence, and when we presented it in our trial, the other side didn't even dispute the evidence. They didn't. They had
but not that the election result was fraudulent,
with zero chain of custody. Yes, well, we can't continue to run elections this way, and we know that we won, and we're going to continue.
By the way, affidavits aren't evidence. That's why they don't
continue to fight.
Affidavits is just like testimony. It's like hello, here's testimony, and I tell you it's totally totes true. It's a sworn affidavit. That's not like if I said right now, hey guys, I'm gonna sign this document. Destiny strangled Melina to death. Does that mean that's evidence that Destiny? No, it's a sworn evidence. It's a sworn affidavit. It could be part of a larger case if you have evidence to also back it up, but there's no evidence.
This in a court of law. And it's really rich that you're sitting across the pond acting like you know what happened on Election Day. I did not see your smiling face. We had lots of international media here covering Election Day. And
I don't know why she keeps bringing up the fact that he wasn't there in Arizona. You don't need to be in Arizona to know the facts that she lost, because I can just look up the results of the election and see that she lost. I can look up what the independent monitor said, and what are they gonna say? What are they all gonna say? That she lost. I don't need to be in Ukraine to say the president of Ukraine is Zelensky. He won the election against Petro Poroshenko. I don't need to be there to say that, because I can see it with my eyes. We have the internet, we have mass communication. This just feels like she doesn't have anything to push back upon here, so she's just kind of like, well, you weren't in Arizona. Like, okay, what else am I supposed to take from that? Like, she wasn't there in Arizona, and yet he knows how the people of Arizona voted better than Kari Lake.
In Arizona, yours is one face I didn't see, and nor did I see it.
You could have had my smiling face, Kari, if you'd asked me nicely.
Arizonans, I would have loved to have seen you. We had more media covering our election than I've ever seen cover any story here in Arizona. And as I said, I covered Arizona for nearly 30 years. So it's okay that you are not comfortable with me fighting this election and fighting for election integrity.
No,
it's
I don't
okay.
mind you.
I can live with myself knowing that
Kari,
Piers Morgan.
let me clarify.
Is that really what she took from his statement? Look, I understand. I understand that you lost by a big portion of votes. Okay, I understand that you lost, Kari, by a big portion of votes. Can you please stop denying the election? You're just angry that I'm fighting for integrity. I feel like she can't deal with the pressure, and so she's just pivoting every single time he tries to get her the answer for that. Like, the problem isn't that she's fighting or that she's angry or that she cares about election integrity. The problem is that she's complaining about her election when she lost. All the evidence points to her losing the election, and every time she denies losing the election, she looks pathetic. That's the problem. I don't care about her whining. To me, I think this just looks Republicans look bad. I care on an institutional level, but on a cynical political level, I love it. I care about the institutions. I don't care about her ruining her reputation and this hurting her later in her political career, which I really hope this will. The thing that gets me here is that Piers Morgan is not really like that far away from Kari Lake ideologically. He really isn't. The reason why is there's no way you're going to be able to get Piers Morgan to a British audience to be able to say, yes, you know what? Against all evidence, against all the facts, against all the independent reports, you actually won. I looked at the non-existence evidence, and it's true. He can't do that as a reporter. It's literally impossible for him to do that and keep his reputation and probably even keep his news channel. Because if he was to lie to his audience, I think that might actually be a bar. That might actually be a bar of conduct here. I don't know why Kari Lake is so shocked at this pushback or is pivoting all around not answering these questions, around not talking about the lack of evidence, besides the fact that she can't deal with the pressure, so she's doing her best to pivot out. That's what it feels like, at least to me.
I don't mind your fighting spirit. I don't mind it in Donald Trump. I've known him a long time.
I have every right to fight this election.
Absolutely,
this is an election
right.
contest.
But there does come a point, both for you
and I'm doing this for the people of Arizona.
There does come a point when, for the future of democracy, you and Donald Trump have to accept at some point you lost an election. Otherwise, the entire system collapses. If your simple response to losing is always, we didn't lose, we won, then democracy dies.
True.
Piers, I grew up in a family of 9. I'm the youngest. My father was a history and government teacher and a football coach.
I don't care. Who asked? What? Okay. That just felt like she just busted out a talking, like she just like panic mode, break glass in case of interview emergency. My father was a football coach in Arizona. This isn't a campaign stop. It's an interview about you lying.
And he taught us that if we lose, and we lose fair and square, we congratulate the winner and we walk away. And that's exactly what I would do if that was a fair and square election. But I'm fighting for the people of Arizona. I go all over this.
Dude, I'm sorry. Her defense against all of the evidence against her, all the independent monitors being against her, the official tally, the official result being against her, and the lack of evidence supporting her case, and all of the judges throwing out everything she's brought forward because it was nothing. Her defense against her lying about this is, well, my dad threw around the old pigskin. And I'm just a gone-tootin' good old American who would never tell a fib on God's green earth. Hallelujah. Thanks very much. Wow. Thank you.
Immoral, morally
thank you very much.
This country. I've been.
Hey, Roy Boy Jones with a tier 1 being a 6-month sub. Kari should be a basketball coach because damn, she can pivot. True. And with that, looks like Gutter Chat's back on stream. Oh!
A curd is a curd.
Just in time. Bammy saves it.
Gave Malafors a tier 1 subscription. Twitchers, leave your savage ways and join us as civilized site chatters so Bezos doesn't get 50%. We accept those who convert to the good word of site.
F-site chat. Amen, Bammy. Bammy spreading the good word. Thank you, Roy, and thank you, Bammy, for the subs. Bammy barely saving site chat.
Burns is an immoral,
morally corrupt, bankrupt man. I some vending machine and gifting a tier 1 sub to Azula Poison. Pizen? I don't know how to say it, but Gutter Chat's on screen.
And probably to 6 states since the election. In Arizona, I can't walk 10 feet without an Arizonan saying, I voted for you, everybody I know voted for you, our ballot was rejected on election day. Please keep fighting for us. I'm fighting for the people of Arizona, and I don't mean any offense to you, but I frankly don't give a damn what you think about it. I'm fighting for the people of Arizona.
Listen,
I truly am.
No offense taken. What?
She's fighting for her donors, the people giving her money, as she scams them and saying, "Don't worry, the court case is right around the corner. Where I'm gonna be king of Arizona. Don't worry, just a little bit longer, just another $5, just another $10, another $20, $30, $40, $50, and I'm sure the judge will take another look at my case." I mean, it's sad, man. Come on.
Whatsoever.
And let me ask you this, Piers. Let me ask you a question. Do you think it's right that you show up on election day? That's the big day. On election day, and 60% of voting locations in the primarily Republican locations have ballots that are printed out wrong.
Listen,
have
Kari, all I know,
machines that are jamming, have 4-hour lines.
Kari,
is
all
that
I know,
okay?
albeit from my
is that
lofty,
okay?
All I know from my lofty place here in London, and I admit I wasn't in Arizona. All I know is that all the official fact-checking entities that have looked at.
By the way, let's say that's true. Let's give it. We should never take Kari Lake by her word. She's a professional liar. That's what she works as. But let's take that at her word. What does that mean? That there's a tabulation error at a voting booth? That means it was rigged? See, she extends this to say it's done intentionally. She doesn't even have like evidence for her base claims, but then will extend those base claims, which she already doesn't have evidence for, and then starts assuming intent, going into intentionally sabotage rigged election. So even if many of her base claims ended up being true or were true, that still wouldn't make up the fact that she's saying this election was rigged against her and this was intentionally sabotaged, like she claimed earlier in the interview.
Into all the claims do not conclude that you did anything other than lose that election.
Come on. Piers, did you just fall off the turnip truck? We know about the fact checkers, and we've seen them. This has all been revealed. Half of them are leftists working for Facebook. Let's be real, okay?
What the fuck am I supposed to take from that? Oh, the people calling me liars. Oh, all of them are not to be trusted. You should trust me, the liar. Look, I'm like, could you look? Okay, from now on, guys, if anybody criticizes me, this is what I'm gonna say. Did you know that guy's conservative? Did you know that guy is right wing? I heard that guy said I lied when I said that I need $1 million to cure cancer. But did you ever know he was a conservative? Did you know they worked for Fox News, Newsmax, Breitbart? And then boom, you can never listen to anything they ever said, ever. No, listen to Kari Lake's trusted news source, Project Veritas.
Let me ask you one final point on that.
What do they know? And what do they know about our election?
At what point would you accept that you've lost?
I gotta say, it is very funny. Just the general, like, screw the checks and balances, screw the journalists, screw the people who check if we're lying or not. They're all wrong. Who do we trust? Me, a political talk show host, a political news show host, a news broadcaster who says that I lost not because I lost, but because of the evil systems that work against me, because I'm just so amazing. Like, she expects us to take this at like just the bottom value, just the face value. Expect everybody to take it. Just be like, damn, I guess I shouldn't trust the news channels, all of them, including right-wing news channels like Fox News, which have all acknowledged that she has lost, right? Don't acknowledge them. Don't acknowledge the experts on this, the experts in election security, who said not only 2020 was one of the most secure elections of her lifetime, with the people who said that then being fired for Trump for daring to contradict him, even though it was Trump's own staff saying this. Don't trust them. Don't trust the fact checkers. Don't trust the cybersecurity experts. Don't trust any of those people. Trust Mike Lindell, the pillow guy, and Kari Lake. Got you. Trust the people who have the most interest in seeing the Republicans win, specifically Kari Lake and Donald Trump, in what is the results for the election. Why should we listen to Kari Lake when it comes to whether she really won or lost the election? You know what that feels like? It'd be like going to an Adrian Broner boxing match and trusting Adrian Broner with what the true results was. He's a completely egotistical maniac. He's never going to give you what actually happened there. Of course he's going to tell you beat Manny Pacquiao, but he didn't. He didn't. It'd be like saying, like, okay, trust infrared to gauge whether he performed well in a debate or not. It's impossible. He's an egomaniac. He's completely deluded. There's no way you can get it like a concrete result from that guy. It's impossible.
Well, do you think that we have a right to move this through the court system? I think we do. I know.
Of course they have a right to move it through the court system. Number one, stop saying it's going to amount to anything, because it hasn't and it won't. And two, all the judge keep throwing out her cases. Keep saying this is nonsense. Bring me more. This is not evidence. This is not evidence of anything. I think of the 10 pieces of evidence, I forget the exact numbers, but out of the 10 pieces of evidence, or of the 10 cases brought, I forget the exact terminology, 8 were just immediately thrown out. And the 2 that were looked at by the judge, they said there's nothing here. Like, I can't do anything with this. She's going nowhere with these cases, and she's going nowhere with these cases. She can spend the next 10 to 20 years of her life until she's dead in the dirt trying to dig up a victory here. It's never going to happen. Of course she has the right to do it, but stop scamming people and stop trying to delude everybody else into thinking you've won. If she wants to spend the rest of her life in her bedroom just waiting for for court cases to come back to her to tell her that she's lost again and again and again. Yeah, they were ruled to have no standing. If she wants to do that, she can. But I don't need to hear her yapping about it every other day. She can do that in the quiet of her own home. But she has donors to get. She's got elections in the future to think about. That's the reason that she's still in public. Not because she truly wants to win this election. She knows it's over. She can't overturn the results of the election. It's done. She can bring these cases forward all day, every day for the next 100 years if she wants to. Nothing's ever going to come of it.
I know that we do. We have the right.
Well, you certainly have a legal right to do it. You've got a legal right to do it. But my point is, at what point...
Indeed.
Is there
and
any
the people
point
are
that you...
expecting me to.
You've got a right to do it. Is there any point where you would accept that you lost?
We are taking it to the Supreme Court.
That was so unintentionally funny. That was unintentionally hilarious. There's no scenario where she will ever accept that she lost.
That's where we're taking it.
Okay. Let me ask
how can she not answer that question?
Secondly, a lot of rumors swirling you might...
The reason she won't answer the question is because Piers Morgan will then say, when will you accept that you've lost? What amount of evidence needs to be shown? Then she'll have to give an amount of evidence. And once she does, there's a decent chance that amount of evidence could be provided. And then if she continues, she looks even more like a clown. Like, what if she was like, well, what I would want was an official, yada, yada, like this piece of evidence. And then local official says, okay, here you go. Right there. Then what's she gonna do? She can't fundraise off of this anymore. They just met her standard. She's gonna have to come up with some new lie, and that's too complicated. She doesn't want to do that.
Might run to be senator. Is that true?
I have had many people reach out to me and say, you need to run for senator. We have an opportunity here to win. And we're really concerned about what would happen if we allow a socialist like the Democrat who's jumped in, or someone like Kirsten Sinema who votes with Joe Biden 95%, 93% of the time. We need to have someone like you run. You're the only Republican who can win. It is.
Everybody always walks up. Wait. Reel that in. People walked up to Kari Lake and said, "You're the only Republican that can win," when she has currently, when it comes to elections, a 0-1 batting record. But she's the only one that can win. This be like me saying, you know what, guys? 2024, here's my plan. I got the option. She's the only one that can beat Trump. Hillary 2024, guys. She's the only one. The only one. My God. Bammy gave Beal Lefty a tier 1, saying Site Chat is the land of the white named genocide, and Makusia is our god. Makusia bless Site Chat. Okay. And with that, Site Chat's back on screen. Look at that. Look at that.
It's in the back of my mind, but my number one priority is my case, and I want to see my case through.
And if Donald Trump says to you he wants you to be his running mate, what would your answer be?
Wow, the hypotheticals. This is crazy. If the royal family invites you in and offers you a job, what are you going to do, Piers? I mean, these are hypotheticals.
Well, if it depends on the job, but if it's a good one, I'd say yes, thanks. Thanks very much. When do I start? Where's my palace?
Well, honest to goodness, I have not given that thought, and I think the president's amazing. He was a great president, greatest of my lifetime, and I know that every American was doing better when he was in the White House.
How old is Kari Lake? Wait, how? Kari Lake age. She was born in 1969. Who's president? Richard Nixon. Who was at? Okay, I gotta see list of presidents. I need to see which president she says is worse than Donald Trump. So we're starting with Nixon. We're starting with Nixon. Okay, so she says Nixon was worse than Trump. Ford was worse than Trump. Carter was worse than Trump. Reagan was worse than Trump. George H.W. Bush was worse. Bill was worse. The second Bush was worse. Barack was worse. And Joe Biden was worse. Man, my goodness. Wait, no, not only that. Also, Lyndon B. Johnson was worse. Lyndon B. Johnson. Civil Rights Act. Lyndon B. Johnson. Okay, sure, buddy. Got you. What did Trump do again? What was his accomplishments? Does anybody remember? Because it always seems to pass my mind. There was like one prison reform bill that I know of, and like that's it. And it was like the most bare bones legislation too.
And
how's the wall coming? How's Mexico coming? Paying for it coming?
I really miss the economy that he helped lead. I miss the fact that he helped to end wars rather than start wars. First president in my lifetime that didn't start a war.
He expanded wars. Donald Trump increased drone strikes by, I think, a margin of 200 to 300%, and then restricted the data on those drone strikes. As for the economy, you can look at the economic chart and GDP growth or stock growth or any of these measurements you want. It was a direct continuation of the Obama legacy era of recovery from the Great Depression. And then at the end of it, led it into a nosedive. You can blame that on COVID, but a lot of that COVID, I think a lot of that the faults around COVID could also probably be extended to the fact that Donald Trump did not really have a plan on how to deal with COVID. Definitely early on, when he was telling people that COVID was just going to magically go away in the spring.
Tier 1 subscription. Welcome to Site Chat Lou, where we take care of our own and the chuds don't bother us.
That is true. The chuds don't get into Site Chat very often. That is true. That is true. We've got gated police community. We've got our own private police in there. Thank you so much for giving the tier 1 sub to Luzerk. Welcome.
And I know that he cares deeply about this country. We really need to get back to putting the people of this country first, giving them back their government. And I am just focused.
Also, can I just say, she said that Donald Trump was the only one to end war. Biden got us out of Afghanistan. Trump signed the deal, but Biden got us out. And from the first day Biden got in the White House to the last day when the last helicopter left Afghanistan, there were people in his ear saying, stop, 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 stay, 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 stay. And he didn't listen to him because since 2015, since late term, actually, I think it was since 2013, 2014, he was telling the Obama administration we should leave Afghanistan. This is one of his, he's been believing that we should get out of Afghanistan for like last 8-9 years. Was it a messy withdrawal? Absolutely. A lot of that was due to the terms that were written in the deal we made with the Taliban. But I don't want to revisit that. That's a totally other day for a totally other topic. But are we really going to say that he is the only person not to start a war under his watch? I mean, I guess you could try to say, oh, what about Ukraine? Biden didn't start that. The Russians did. So, I mean, Biden's the only one to really end one on our watch, like truly end one.
On what I'm doing here in Arizona, to be honest.
You could say you could give Trump credit in the idea that he started the withdrawal process, right, by signing the agreements. You can give that credit, I guess. But then there was a lot of problems with the agreement process. Whatever, let's continue.
Final question on Ukraine. President Zelensky's here in London, gave a stirring speech to Parliament. I'm curious why so many Republicans seem to want Vladimir Putin to win.
Damn. Oh my God. I didn't expect that. I was getting ready like, oh, this is gonna hurt. This is gonna hurt. It's Piers Morgan. We're about to have a bad take. I was beginning to wonder why Republicans haven't grabbed him by the hair and thrown him out of the country. But no. Okay, let's hear it. I'm actually interested in the answer to this.
You know, why don't you ask them?
What's your view?
All I know is I am here in Arizona, and it is nothing is more aggravating and anger-inducing to the people of Arizona than watching these buffoons back in Washington, D.C. take our hard-earned money and write a check to Ukraine. Over $100 billion has gone to Ukraine. And we sit here in Arizona with a wide-open border. The narco-terrorists and the drug cartels, with the help of the CCP in China, are pushing in and funneling record amounts of fentanyl.
Okay, so what were we going to do to take those old armored vehicles that we had, many of whom we were never going to put in the military service again? What were we going to do to take those and turn them into tax rebates for Arizonans? What were we going to do? Were we going to give every Arizonan a Bradley? Oh, you know what? I know what my grandma was talking about, what she wanted. She says she wants a tax rebate in the form of Patriot Air Defense System. That's what she said the other day. Oh boy, howdy. She said she wanted, oh, you know what also? I heard Billy, the neighbor, he said, you know what? I don't like that Lend-Lease Act that we signed. I want a Lend-Lease Act. I want 20 tanks. I want to buy guns and ammunition from the American government, American weapons manufacturers. I want that. I want to pay back that debt for years and years to come, right? Whether or not that aid gets sent to Ukraine does not have any impact on the drug war, drug issues, or the southern border. The reason why the aid is being sent now is because Ukraine's existence is up in the air right now. Whether they win or lose the war is being decided right now. Whether homelessness will exist or not isn't being decided right here, right now. Whether immigration, illegal immigration, undocumented immigration happens or not forever in all eternity isn't being decided right here, right now. But this is a generational struggle going on right now in Ukraine. They need that stuff, and they need it now to stop the mass graves that are being filled in Izium, the largest mass grave since the Yugoslav genocides, 440 bodies in one mass grave, Izium. Well, what about Bucha? I actually personally went to Bucha to see that one. So you can want money. I'm doing the Trump hands now. Trump's rubbed off of me. So you can want money to deal with issues in Arizona, but there's no reason to lambaste Zelensky or the Ukrainians or look at disgust that this money is sent over, because much of the money that is sent over is equipment. Are you saying we should have taken these Cold War era armored vehicles and just put them on the border? Take the Abrams tanks, put them on the border, literally militarize the border. So when this equipment could be saving lives and liberating villages, instead we point these tank guns at these unarmed, undocumented immigrants fleeing violence, terrorism, and crime? Is that going to solve the issue? Is that going to solve the problem? Actually, when you think about it, staffing these Abrams tanks, staffing these old armored vehicles, which are out of military service anyway, putting these all on the border, that's probably going to have a longer, long-term cost than one-time or multi-time aid deliveries to the Ukrainian government. Just silly. Much of the aid can't even be used to deal with these issues because it's already military equipment that's already made. Much of this is also through Lend-Lease. So I don't know if you're somehow going to take the Lend-Lease Act and like turn that into somehow Lend-Leasing Border Patrol, tons of new, like, I don't know how that's going to work. And the portion that could be used for this, if it wasn't being used, I highly doubt it would be relocated for this issue. So we can want to send aid to Ukraine and also deal with other political issues. And Ukraine does not need to be the punching bag for the right wing in this country when they're fighting a life and death struggle for their freedom. You know, all those people who masturbate to the idea of America getting invaded so they can play like urban guerrilla fighter, and their militia that they go in the backwoods and train with every other weekend. They can actually be of some purpose. That stuff's happening right now in Ukraine. Yet those people who are doing that LARPing are also the same people that have the most disdain for Ukrainians. It's never been about freedom or democracy or free speech from those people, it feels like. It feels like it's just been about power fantasy. My goodness. Unrelated to Kari Lake, because I don't think she participates in that, but just something I've been had on my mind for a while. My goodness, man.
Through Arizona into the rest of this country, we're watching a young generation die from fentanyl poison.
All those are problems.
We have a wide open border, and they don't want to send.
But Kari, I don't disagree with you.
They don't want to send a penny here.
I don't disagree with you about those issues, and they have to be tackled. But they have nothing to do with Ukraine. And again, my curiosity is simply that when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, for example, America couldn't wait to get stuck in to kick him out, and most Republicans I know supported it. And yet here we have Vladimir Putin, who is on a whole different level of dictator, marching into a European country. And to my astonishment, some Republicans seem to think that the best answer to this is to let him just take Ukraine. And I'm just bemused why. Why wouldn't every fiber of a Republican being be, we have got to defeat
$5.
Putin?
Twitch chat. Let us have a truce and come together to pool our Twitch points together to post the legendary UWU emote. No more brother wars.
More brother wars. They're very profitable for me, actually.
Wherever he marches in and tries to thwart democracy.
Well, this Republican believes that we need to make sure we're putting the needs of Americans first, and right now Americans are struggling.
Do we really? Okay, let's be for real. Oh, we're saying we're putting the needs of Ukraine first. Is that the argument? Foreign aid makes up less, I think, like, historically, foreign aid for the last 30, 40 years makes up what? 1 to less than 1% of our budget? Did you know a majority of Americans think foreign aid makes up like 20% of our budget, our federal budget? Like 20 to 25%? That's the image people have in their minds of what we're giving to Ukraine. That like, that we're like taking our coffers and taking like 20 to 30 to 40% of our federal budget and just handing it to the Ukrainians. That's the image most Americans have in their mind about foreign aid and how it works in this country. It's completely flawed. Foreign aid usually doesn't even break a single percentage point when it comes to how much we're shipping overseas. In this instance, it has actually exceeded a percentage point to be, oh my gosh, drum roll, a few percentage points this time. But that image is still there. And so now the entirety of foreign aid in the eyes of many people is just giving 20 to 30% of our budget over to Ukraine. And so to those people, they're outraged because that's the image that's been put in their head. And when you see how people like Kari Lake, Tucker Carlson, and the rest of these liars and hacks talk about Ukraine and talk about the aid that's being sent to Ukraine, you would think that too, because they talk about it so often. You would be like, oh my God, it must be 20 to 30 to 40%, when it's not. Doesn't even hit double digits. Doesn't even get close to hitting double digits. But that's what they think. And not even to mention that much of the aid isn't even in money, and as in a percentage of our federal budget as in money. Much of it's equipment that we can't even use anyway because it's out of date. Stuff that we don't need to replenish. Old Cold War stockpiles or through the Lend-Lease program, which means Ukraine's going to pay it back. We're scapegoating Ukraine for all of our domestic problems. This is no different than what we've heard for the last 40 to 50 to 60 years, where like a disaster happens in some country, we say we're going to use US aid to send $500 million over there. So instead of 10 to 20,000 people dying, maybe it'll be 200, right? Because, or aid or whatever we can do to try to reduce the amount of harm that's happening. And we see so many people come out and say, I can't believe we're sending aid overseas when we got homeless veterans on our streets. These are both issues we should deal with. But do you know how long it would take to ever send aid anywhere if we had to deal with every issue within America? It would be the end of human history. Think about all the issues you have in your home right now. You probably don't have many, but you have some. Could you imagine some disaster hits your neighbor, a fire burns down their house, they have nothing. And they're like, please, we need some money to get back on our feet. You know we're hardworking people. This came out of nowhere. And you're like, I would, but I've been wanting to, I got to deal with this one issue or that other issue. Sometimes the poorest end up giving the most because they know what it's like to suffer like that. I guess as Americans, where in that instance we can think about helping that person, or on these other instances we can think about helping these people, definitely the poorest, because the poorest seem to give more as a percentage of their income in charity, in donations, and to help other people. But when it comes to foreigners, I guess it's like that logic completely breaks down. The vast majority of our federal budget is still spent in the United States for Americans or on projects that have to do with America. A lot of it isn't spent wisely, to be clear, but a very small percentage is spent on foreign aid. And it is a scapegoat for these ghouls. That's all it is.
I've talked to retirees who saved and did everything right. Many of them were even veterans. They did everything right. And they're watching their...
What's the difference between how much we spent on Iraq and Afghanistan and how much we spent on Ukraine? Oh my God. We spent, I think, around $2 trillion on Afghanistan. Because some people said, we've actually spent more on aid in Ukraine than we have in Afghanistan. That's not true. What they're talking about is a specific type of aid. But we spent I think $2 trillion. Let me see. How much money did we spend in Afghanistan? How much money did we spend in Afghanistan? I saw somebody say no in chat. How much money do you think we spent in Afghanistan? Here it is. $2.131 trillion. So not even comparable. Not even comparable. And then you add Iraq to that? I don't even want to Google it. Real point is the border is fucked. Can't deny that. Okay. If I bring up Ukraine and you bring it over to the border, it sounds more to me like you're unwilling to talk about Ukraine, not like you care about the border. Could you imagine if every single time I brought up an issue like, hey guys, we have a real mental health crisis in this country. You know how many people are killing themselves? How many people are putting guns in their mouth and blowing their brains out? And you're like, yeah, but think about the fentanyl point. It just sounds like you're diverting. And that's what it sounds like every time with Ukraine as well. Definitely when people try to compare the Russian invasion to undocumented immigration. You doing that comes from a massive amount, a level of privilege of just, I've never been in a war zone before. If you think that undocumented children, women, and men, vast majority of them unarmed, crossing the border, paying coyotes to do it, is comparable to tanks rolling into your village, burning everything down and filling up mass graves, then you're sheltered and you have no clue what a war is. I think a lot of people are just desperate to have a war. And so that something has to be the enemy. So it's them. They're the enemy. They're the invading army. They have to speak in the term of the invader, or it's not going to scare people as much as they want it to. What have you sent this? The Bakhmut Fortress. What is this? A song about Bakhmut? Okay, well, maybe we'll watch this after.
Retirement savings evaporate under Joe Biden. My focus is on the people, the good people of Arizona, and that's why I'm fighting for them every day. I continue to fight. I watch the people who are sitting in office here, and they are dead set on destroying this state and making our lives, making us suffer and making us less safe. So my focus is on the people of Arizona, and I intend to keep my focus here. We oftentimes get involved in skirmishes and wars and try to start things up overseas, and I think the American people are growing very weary of that.
The majority of Americans support aid to Ukraine. It's been like this since the beginning of the war, and it's still like that today. It's not even close to the amount of Americans who want to stop aid to Ukraine or even decrease aid to Ukraine by any percentage. So, I mean, because of people like Kari Lake, the percentage of people who are against it has increased. Good job. You will be known as the hero who, when the country was invaded, you said, in a brave moment, let's do nothing. Congratulations. But the majority of Americans still support aid to Ukraine.
Incredibly
And with somebody who was citing polling data earlier, I thought she would care about what the majority of people thought.
weary watching our hard-earned money go overseas, and we're in a precarious spot if we continue to behave that way. And I don't think that's the American spirit.
Okay, well, Kari, on that we will disagree. But
Dude, if she thinks it's not the American spirit to be involved globally, then you just, I don't know. You haven't studied American history. Like, what periods of time America was most prosperous and what period of times America was not most prosperous? Was it when it was isolationist? Ask the Japanese how isolationism worked for them when American boats came on their shores and fired volleys of cannonballs, showing how, far back the Japanese Navy was, the Japanese military was.
But it's been great to interview you. Thank you for coming on Piers Morgan Uncensored. And I will follow your rising career with great interest.
I hope it spirals out and burns to the ground. Kari Lake. My goodness.